Hi everyone, it's me Willow and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm sorry about the lighting, it's not the best, but as always I'm recording in my car after just seeing Immaculate, and this is going to be my Immaculate movie review. It's going to have some spoilers in it. If you guys don't mind leaving a thumbs up on this video, commenting down your favorite Sydney Sweeney movie, or if you guys got the chance to see Immaculate, and give me a subscribe if you guys like this type of content, as all that interaction really does help my channel to grow. Alright, so Immaculate by Mohan, I think that's how you say his last name. I actually thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I didn't 100% know what to go into expecting, because I tried to go spoiler free because I didn't really want to know what happened at the end. But wow, I am not a horror movie person. I'm a pretty scaredy cat, but I decided I wanted to go see it because I really love the story behind this movie. So I'm gonna link a couple articles down below, but basically Sydney Sweeney, who is the main actress and also produces this film, this is one of her first producer credits, I'm pretty sure. She apparently auditioned for this movie about 10 years ago, and I don't 100% know what happened. Obviously the movie never got lifted off, but when she started to get more fame with Euphoria, and she did reality, she's doing a lot of stuff with HBO Max, or just Max, and obviously she's having movies like this, and she just had Anyone But You around Christmas, Valentine's Day, so she's really starting to get her, credits and her dues done in Hollywood. And she's very smart and savvy and going into the producer lane. I just love seeing actors, we're really seeing this with Emma Stone right now as well. I just love seeing actors get into the producer line. So Sydney really lifted this project off the ground. She brought it to Mohan, who she'd worked with on Everything Sucks, and then on The Voyeurs as well, if that's how you say it. The Voyeurs, I think that's how you say it. And I love Neon. Neon's one of my favorite production companies, and obviously they have done a lot of work with independent film and lifting small movies up and supporting actors during the SAG strike. So I wanted to go support this movie and give it my money and see it on the big screen, because the director was emphasizing to see this on the big screen. And I'm glad I did. Like I said, I really did enjoy it. I loved the scenery of the movie. I think it was very beautiful. Obviously, it was set in Italy. I'm not a very religious person myself, but I thought it'd be interesting to kind of see a horror movie based on this type of theme. I feel like there's not a whole lot of religious horror movies, but I thought it worked pretty well. I also thought the themes of motherhood and birthing and kind of the horrors of that was also really well highlighted in this movie. As a woman, there were some of these scenes where I was just crawling, just thinking oh my god, birth is the scariest thing in this movie. There's the threat of the church, the threat of are these people actually doing God's work, or is it, Satan's disguising himself as a light angel? I think that's one of the passages that Sister Cecilia finds from one of the old sisters that had been, buried alive. That was the opening scene with one of the actresses from White Lotus season 2. She did great with the little scene that she had. Honestly, that was, like I said, I didn't really know what to expect horror-wise, but that opening scene with her leg getting broken in the gate by the other nuns, and then she gets buried alive. I just hate movies when they show people being buried alive, and she's screaming, she's wasting her oxygen, and I'm like, girl, you ain't getting out. But so great setup, and then we just go right into Sister Cecilia, which is Sydney Sweeney, and the people on the border, they're already questioning, and you're like, is this a good idea for her to go to this nunnery? Obviously she has not a lot of guidance. She doesn't speak Italian, and she's just, I'm going with the word of God. I've been found by this father, who's played by Alvarona. I think that's how you say his name. He was in Money Heist. He was fantastic in this movie as well. Really strong cast. I feel like it's not the most revolutionary horror film as most of the horror was jump scares, and there was a few like body horror stuff. Like we had a scene with the fingernail with Sweeney, which I thought that was going to be a little bit worse. Like I'm really bad with fingernail stuff, like interrogation scenes where they're ripping the fingernails off, but I didn't think that one was that bad. One scene I thought was bad was when they took the nun, Gwendolyn, or it's played by Benedictria, I think that's how you say her name. She was in Baby on Netflix. She was fantastic in this role as well, as kind of like she was more like a rebel. She was kind of going against the church, and when she goes against the church, she gets, I believe, I couldn't watch it, I was like squinting, so I'm not 100% sure if they took her tongue or if they took her teeth, but I think they took her teeth. And those body horror things, like I would kind of equate it to Ready or Not. I felt like a lot of the visual stuff, especially with like the white blood and how that visuals in Ready or Not with the wedding dress, and it also plays on themes of womanhood and kind of, you know, the control that these stereotypical roles like wife and mother can almost like cage or trap in women. So I really thought that those themes were handled well, especially in Immaculate, and with how at one point Sister Celia almost escapes. Like she's been taught how to like do all of these things, like these chores, like how to properly hang the drying. She was taught how to cut off a chicken's head, and she uses this skill that she's taught by the church to use against them. And in this one scene, she's made everybody in the church think that she's having a miscarriage, when in reality she's used this tool of cutting the chicken's head off and using that blood to disguise her. So she almost gets to, and this is the thing, the church is in, you know, rural Italy. They are far away from the city. She hasn't been to a hospital. She's nowhere near a village, and she can see the village on the horizon. And the head sister at the church finds the dead carcass of the chicken under the bed. She didn't get rid of the flippin' evidence. She should have thrown it out that window before she started screaming. And they stop the car, and she's able to get out of the car, and just the scene of her running, she's running along that Italian countryside, and I thought that was just a really beautiful scene. She's covered in blood, she's pregnant, she's running, and this woman just, you know, like obviously we have images of Mary, we have images of Mother Nature and the beauty that women can give to this world. And then just to see how they kind of use this birth against her to trap her. And they catch her, and I was like, no! And they take her back to the church or the convent, and I was just, oh my God. And the whole kind of like insemination scene, like they don't really show obviously what happens, but I love that whole scene as well. Like she's in the confession booth at the beginning, after she's like passed out, finding these red-faced nuns. Like I kind of wish we knew a little bit more about the red-faced nuns as well, because we didn't learn enough about them, in my opinion. We did learn the backstory with like the doctor and why he wanted to make you know, like a second coming of Christ type thing. So we learned about that, but we didn't really learn about like the religious aspects of like those nuns. So that's one thing I wish we learned a little bit more about. And even like the father, like the sorry, I'm not religious, I don't know what their official names are, but the head priest who Cecilia kills at the end, like he's the one who's in the confession booth, and she's like, what did you do to me, like halfway through the movie? So he kind of like fades out, and we're like, what's going on? It seems almost like this huge, narrow, dark hallway. And then she's like pushed down onto a medical bed. Have these visuals of like red lights, and the red nuns come, and they're like pulling her face, and it kind of like goes black, I believe, when they bring kind of like this, I don't know if it's like again, I can't remember what the word is, but because I'm not religious, but the iron stake that goes through Jesus's hands when he's crucified. I think that's what it is. They like stab her with that, but it goes black, and she's like, okay, nothing happened, it was all a dream. Sorry, it's now raining, so if you hear any rain, I'm sorry about that. I wish I knew a little bit more about how the whole pregnancy actually occurred. I actually knew more about the red nuns and the overall ideas of the church and like how they were brought to this moment, because obviously the doctor had the doctor and the father had a big influence on bringing this savior, right? And obviously if you're religious and very religious like these sisters are at this convent, I feel like they would go along with it, right? And they feel like they see the proof through Cecilia and the miracles that happened with her in her life, and obviously this is God's plan. So I just feel like there's a couple left questions. So I feel like obviously this movie isn't perfect. Like I said, I feel like a lot of the jump scares, as I mentioned, they're kind of just jump scares. They're not super original. I did like the beginning, kind of setting up the whole suspense with that sister and how she gets taken. And then we see with Gwen's character and how when you speak up, like this is all kind of symbolism, women trying to escape, women speaking up, and the punishments that they are forced upon their silence. They have to face their sins. So I really did enjoy the usage of those themes, the feminism themes and the birthing themes, the caging themes. I mentioned Ready or Not being a very similar movie to this. If you guys are into literature, I felt very drawn to the yellow wallpaper in this movie. If you guys don't know the yellow wallpaper, it's a classic literature piece has feminist themes. It's about this woman and she is kind of narrating this whole story about how she's in the countryside and she's locked in this room and she feels like this yellow wallpaper that kind of has like this design, and she feels like she sees this woman trapped in this wallpaper. And in the end, it's kind of left up to the reader to see, was it actually her who was always trapped in this room? Because there's kind of some themes of postpartum depression that goes on in the yellow wallpaper. Obviously, there's a lot of postpartum and having, like, there's a whole scene of giving birth in Immaculate. So I really felt like the ideas of being trapped and womanhood with the yellow wallpaper really related to Immaculate as well. So yeah, like I just love these themes, and to get to the end and the whole catacombs, like that's another thing. I kind of wish I knew more about the catacombs. Obviously in Italy and in France and a lot of other European countries there are, and I'm sure other countries as well, I can just only think of European countries off the top of my head, but they have catacombs. And obviously we were mentioned the catacombs at the beginning, and we assume that one sister was buried alive down in the catacombs probably. But Cecilia finally escapes, and the father is still after her. Even after she lights him on fire and his whole study's on fire, he still goes after her. The whole scene of her in the catacombs was scary because it reminded me of that other movie. It's about a movie in the catacombs, and I was scared like one of those catacomb people was gonna jump out or something, or some crazy red nun was gonna jump out. But she finally makes it to the flippin' light and she's almost out, and then it's the foot, just like at the beginning with the first nun. It's the foot. He drags her back in, and he starts performing a C-section on her. Oh my god, that scene, just the brutality, I just love, I'm getting into this, guys, the theory, but just looking at the ideas of how much beauty and how much brutal pain that can come through birth and this life. So I just loved seeing that, and just seeing the brutality of that, of him wanting to bring the savior into the world, yet at the same time, let's just throw away our Mary. That's the question that she has. She's worried that she's going to be thrown away after the birth. And that's another symbolism of women and how motherhood, people don't take women seriously. And once a woman, it's kind of like this whole time, the 9 months, everybody's focused on the mother, right? It's like, oh, how's mom, how's baby, always checking in on her. And then the moment that she gives birth, it's how's baby, how's baby, how's baby. It's no, how's mom. It's not like she just, you know, went through this very beautiful yet traumatic moment, right? So her, you know, escaping, like using that tool that was used against, like, and this is the whole thing. She's like, this is not God's work. And at the end, she uses the tool that crucified Jesus against her abuser, and she kills him, and she's able to escape. And then she just has to give birth on the countryside on this cliff after all this crazy stuff has happened to her. And I just felt really in awe of Sydney Sweeney and that power that she held in that moment and just letting it all go. And she's there by herself. She has no support system, and she just gives birth, and she has to look at this thing that she grew for 9 months, and she comes to the conclusion to kill it, because I'm assuming that obviously it's like they mentioned that one line in the Bible of how maybe it's not always like a light angel, but it can be like a devil in disguise, right? So I'm assuming, like, they never showed us the baby, but I'm assuming it was a devil, some sort of devil baby or whatever, or it could just be a symbolism of trauma. And I feel like this is, like, obviously this movie has a lot of controversy, and Neon has been using it for their promotion, help this movie get off the ground, and people have been saying it's against the church, it's pro choice and all this stuff. And obviously the end, the symbolism of pro-choice and her taking this, like, she had no control, no choice over this whole birth this entire time, and then at the end she takes it into her own hands, and that's the end of the movie. And I know a lot of people would probably be like, obviously people are all up in arms about this movie, but I don't know, like, I felt very moved by it, and it was very short, so I definitely think I will watch it again in the future when it comes out, like, on streaming or something. So the movie was definitely not perfect by means, but I feel like I'm very glad that the story got told. Like, 10 years later, Sydney Sweeney was able to bring this movie to big screens, and I just think it's great that sometimes movies can be thrown aside and not appreciated, but years later it can find an audience, you know? So I definitely don't think everybody's gonna love it. Like I said, it's been pretty controversial, but I did enjoy it. I feel like it was a solid movie throughout. I think the cast is very strong with their acting abilities. I don't think anybody kind of, you know, threw off the believability of the story. Everybody was fully into the storyline of the religious convent. So yeah, I just think it was great. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I appreciate all your support as always. Please comment down below your favorite scene in Immaculate. I honestly think the ending was mine. That long, like, 2-minute scream of her birthing. So yeah, leave a comment down below. Please like this video and give it a subscribe if you want to see more content like this in the future. So thank you guys so much, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!